Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life.
This episode is sponsored by Grip. Got lots of people, places, and things to track? Grip is the easiest way for farmers to track anything important to their operation. With flexible QR code tracking, keeping digital records is a snap with Grip's operator-first mobile app centralizing alerts, reminders, electronic forms, and team conversations. With simple month-to-month pricing and no long-term commitments, Grip can transform and streamline your operation so that you can focus on what's most important, growing. For a limited time, get 15% off any monthly or yearly subscription at grip.ag/pricing with the code THRIVEIN25. That's GRIP.ag/pricing with the code THRIVEIN25. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Today, my guest is Kyle Becker, a veterinarian and first-generation farmer from East Central Indiana. Together with his wife, Kyle turned a dream into Becker Farms, a diverse, pasture-raised operation producing beef, pork, poultry, and eggs for the local community. Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so give me a little bit of an overview, Kyle, of your farm.
Yeah, so our particular location, we would be the first generation there. But I grew up on growing up, we had about 1,000 acres of row crop hay pasture. We had about 60 milk cows and then a feedlot where we fed out all of the male calves from the dairy cows. We bought some calves in, but not a lot. It wasn't our main focus. So I've been a part of agriculture in East Central Indiana since the late 80s. And then I went to high school, and my mother said I wasn't allowed to milk cows. So I went to Purdue. I completed a doctor of veterinary medicine degree in 2007 and got out of school and then went straight and bought a farm because I was young and didn't know any better. So
Okay.
So that's kind of how we got it started.
Yeah. So talk to me a little about the veterinarian side. Is that something that you're still actively practicing?
Yes. Yep. I practice part/full-time. I work for Heritage Vet Partners. We're a group of veterinarians based in West Point, Nebraska. I'm licensed in Indiana and Ohio, but I take calls from many other states. And I still very much enjoy working in animal agriculture and in the healthcare of livestock in Indiana and Ohio.
Okay, so you're a televeterinarian?
Yeah, well, I'm 100% ambulatory, so I go to the animals. The animals do not necessarily come to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot of consulting, but the
Gotcha.
vast majority of my customers are lifelong livestock owners and raisers, and so we don't have very many what might be considered a traditional emergency. Like I don't run around and pull calves, or I don't go dehorn. You know, I might dehorn a handful of calves a year just for some smaller clients that it's as much a social time and they just don't feel like doing it as it is actually a veterinary service. You know, so I've been dehorning calves since I was
Gotcha.
9. It's not like dehorning calves is a veterinary service, not like doing a surgery might be, but yeah. So, but no, mostly consulting, animal health consulting. So if you if you raise calves and you
Yeah.
have you have too much scours in your calves or too much respiratory disease, why you call me and we work through your problem and get it fixed and get the appropriate safe measures in place to mitigate your disease risk.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep.
What are the trends that you're seeing in conventional agriculture with these farmers that you work with?
Probably the number one biggest trend is aging out. Um,
Mm.
like I'm 42, 80 to 90% of the livestock that I see through my veterinary medicine practice are owned by clients that are for sure over 60, and the vast majority are over 65, and a good portion of them are in their 70s. Um,
Wow.
and so, you know, the their children, many of them went to work in in more traditional jobs outside of agriculture or even in agriculture, but not directly related to the farm.
Mm.
So now there's getting ready to be a big turnover in who actually owns the animals and how they're cared for.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so that's something you said there that's interesting is who owns the animals and how they're cared for. What are the trends you're seeing with the next generation of farmers? And how do they want to care for animals?
much more technology focused. I mean, yeah, we have like
Okay.
for instance in lactating dairy cattle, we have health monitoring systems. Whether you use collars or tags or boluses, um, I mean, I have half a dozen apps on my phone, and if you would like to know how many minutes a cow chewed her cud today at one of my clients, I can pull it out of my pocket and I can show you. Um, I may get a call from a herdsman and he'll be like, look up, let's say just look up cow 1234.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can pull it out of my pocket. I can look up 1234. And, a lot of times you'll see, well, there was clearly an intervention 2 days ago. And so I
Mm.
can ask the caretaker, what did you do 2 days ago? Well, I IV'd her with some hypertonic and I pumped her and, I administered XYZ antibiotic. And I'm like, okay, well, what was your follow up? Well,
Yeah.
here's what I did do, or here's what I didn't do. And I'm like, well, her health metrics improved for the 6 hours after you administered, IV fluids and oral fluids.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, it regressed back to to where she was. And I said, so for sure we need to go
Yeah.
back. We need to retreat with what we gave her 2 days ago, and then we
Yeah.
need to we need to reevaluate what our follow up is going to be, so that instead of a regression of health, we have a progression of health. And
Yeah.
so the majority of the caretakers are non-English speaking, and
Mm.
so teaching the animal caretakers some about medicine, how to care for cattle. Um, but I mean, the majority of them are incredibly driven and care an awful lot about the animals, because the majority of ownership does not touch their animals on a daily basis.
Mm.
I was at a dairy today. I mean, they're 2,400 cows and they're expanding to 3,600 cows. And I mean, the owner lives in the Netherlands. I mean, he's not
Really?
even, yeah, he doesn't even live here. So, um,
So
so
is that
it's all under management, you know, the,
yeah, so the farm owner lives in the Netherlands. Is that because someone from the Netherlands came to the US and bought farmland, an existing farm, or was he here and then decided to move over there? What's the story there?
yeah, he would be a Dutch national, has goat dairies and cow dairies in the
Okay.
Netherlands, and also has dairies here.
Fascinating.
Uh, so also owns some beef cattle, some beef cattle here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a livestock businessman.
So talk a little bit then about what do you feel like that change is going to do for our small communities and just the rural landowners?
Yeah, so like the rural communities, there, we all know that there's been a huge brain drain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, our top talent tends to leave our rural communities. So, um, that leaves a void
Yes.
that tends to be filled with non-English, it tends to be filled with non-English speaking health, animal health caretakers.
Yeah.
So that changes the dynamic of the local school system and of the local church system. Um, yeah, I mean we have a local church over kind of by where I live, and their Sunday morning services are in English, and their Sunday afternoon services are in Spanish, and there's 10 times as many cars in the parking lot in the afternoon as there are in the
Wow.
morning.
Yeah.
And the demographic is totally different. I mean, the morning crowd are all elderly, and the afternoon crowd are all families, are all traditional families, husbands,
Yeah.
wives, kids. Um, yeah, so it's just a very, very different dynamic.
Wow. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little about your farm because that's what we came to talk on about.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Share a little bit about like how many acres do you farm, and you're into animal proteins, correct?
Yeah. So in 2006, I was doing an externship with Monsanto, actually selling BST. So that's a fun
Okay.
fact.
Yes.
Yeah, and so which was a very common thing in 2006. Nobody really thought any different about it.
Yeah.
But no, the veterinarian that I was writing with was a lifelong dairy veterinarian, super smart guy. And he's like, hey, he says, you need to read Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. I said, all right.
Okay.
So we're driving around selling BST,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm reading The Omnivore's Dilemma. And I thought, well, yeah, this all makes sense. Um, I see the nice thing about that book is it pretty much calls everybody out. It calls out big ag,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it calls out big organics. Um, I mean, it just kind of it sheds light on the entire system, and
Correct.
in good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, that's the purpose of the book. And then, of course, Food Inc. came out not long after that, and so that also brings about, um, large amounts of discussion on where are we headed, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so then, when I got out of school, uh, like I said, we had large student loan debt. We had a car to pay for, and I didn't have a farm, so. Uh, I didn't know any better. This is all I'd ever done my whole entire life. So I went to USDA and we got a guaranteed USDA loan and we bought a farm. And so we were up to our eyeballs, in 6 months. By the time, within 6 months of getting out of school, um, we'd bought a farm and started building fence. And so my original plan was to sell beef breeding stock, to sell bred heifers and breeding bulls,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have a big name, and I didn't have an outlet to send them west. And at the time, it was really difficult to sell bulls in Indiana for a profitable price.
Mm.
Um, there just were not very many progressive beef beef cow calf producers. And so there wasn't a huge demand for bulls that were, that were high quality bulls. So the cattle price got really high right there about the first year that I had bulls to sell. And I had prospective buyers that were offering me less money for my breeding bulls than what uh, fed steer was worth at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is ridiculously silly.
Yes.
And a mentor of mine was a farmer's market vendor at our local farmer's market, and he's like, Kyle, he goes, process your beef. Let's take it to the farmer's market. Let's sell beef at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
I said, well, I've got a mortgage, and this thing's got to float, so let's do it. And so that's kind of what started it all. Um, and then we've progressed from there. And as you go to the farmer's market, you realize you can sell a little bit of beef, and it's going to take the same tent, and it's going to take the same time and the same trip. And so then you're like, well, let's add some pigs. So then you add pigs, and then you're like, well, I could sell chicken. So then you add chicken. And then I really like raising turkeys. Those are, I mean, second to a milk cow, turkeys are hands down my favorite thing to raise.
Yeah.
And so we started raising Thanksgiving turkeys. And then, of course, people want them cut up. So then we started, selling ground turkey and turkey breasts and turkey lunch meat. And so then it just kept on progressing from there. There are some other local farms in the area that we contracted with them to supply them with a lot of their needs. And then as some of that phased out, we just kept the production going and started selling it ourselves. So yeah, we just keep on growing. And of course the pandemic blew everything up. We went, there for the month of May during the pandemic, we were 10x what our normal sales would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave us, the pandemic gave us the opportunity to get out from our local lender.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge help. We started out at USDA, and my joke always is that USDA ties your shoestrings together. So, the best you can do is hop.
Yes.
And then the local bank, they put ankle cuffs on you so you kind of waddle, take little steps.
Yeah.
But by the time you actually make it to an ag lender, why then you can take a deep breath and you can actually take a step forward.
Yeah.
And progress your farm.
So talk a little bit about that. So like USDA, so that you're talking about using USDA as the lender for your farm loan, correct?
Yeah, because so like a guaranteed young farmer loan through USDA is for a young farmer that has absolutely no collateral.
Yes.
Our debt to asset ratio was like 1.67 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had $1.67 of debt for every dollar of assets.
Yes.
And so nobody's going to lend you a dime,
Correct.
So you have to have a loan guarantor.
Yes.
And so that's what USDA provides.
Yes. But then, talk a little bit about how they tie your shoestrings together, and what things are they doing that makes it challenging?
Well, there's no money for growth.
Gotcha.
At all.
Okay.
You have to cash flow from day one. So if you want to go from 1,000 chickens to 10,000 chickens, you got to figure out how to cash flow it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a relatively short, chickens are great because they only take 7 weeks.
Correct.
But yeah, you've got to have a market, and then of course whoever you sell them to has to actually pay you for them.
Correct.
And so if it takes 7 weeks to raise them and get them delivered to the customer, but it takes the customer another 8 weeks to pay you, you can't start your next batch until you get paid for your first batch. Mm-hmm. Because you just have no cash on hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it really, really tough to to kind of get the ball rolling. But no, cattle got super high in 2014, and I kind of saw that coming, and I bought everything I could buy. I mean, I bought every baby calf we could raise. I mean, I had calves in the yard. We had calves everywhere. And then I mean, I sold feeders and sold feeders and sold feeders um before the big crash. And I mean, we made enough that we got out, we ended up at an 80% debt to asset ratio, which was low enough that our local bank would then take us on. So I mean, we went from like 160 something, down to 80
Yeah.
to point 0.8. And so you made it to the local bank. And so then the local bank was good. I mean, the trouble with bankers is that, it was trendy at the time. There in 2014, 15, it was trendy to pick up farms because, of course, we're incredibly capital intensive. And the balance sheets were all rosy, and there was sunshine and rainbows, and everything was just grand and glorious. And so the local bank was just falling over to come take us on. And so so we got out from under USDA. We got the student loans refinanced so that we had a little bit of breathing room. And then, of course, you go a couple of years down the line and things are not as rosy, and feed costs go up, and the balance sheet doesn't look quite as pretty. And so then they're just, they're yanking back the reins. And like I had in 2019 was the only year that our sales actually dipped since we ever started. And I mean, they were just ready to, the local bank was ready to pull the plug. They would not take a meeting to refinance my operating line.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I had documented, messages. I am trying to get a meeting with my loan officer from February the 11th, and my operating line was due for renewal April the 1st. So I'm like, we got our taxes done. We need to have a meeting. And it was just completely ghosted for, then of course we get to April the 1st. He still wouldn't take a meeting. So we had an extension. Well, they rolled this thing all the way to the middle of July until they couldn't roll it any farther. And then they're like, yeah, we're not going to renew your operating line. And I'm like, well, can we just reduce it?
Yeah.
Can we, let's not just cut the whole thing. Well, no, they don't want to do that either. And part of the challenge is that I had divulged, I guess, early on when I realized that, they were gonna, that they wanted to divest from us. I'm like, well, my parents could cash out life insurance and I could pay you guys off, and then I could pay my parents off.
Yeah.
Well, they loved that idea
because they just wanted to be out of it.
Yeah, they just wanted to be out of it. And the best part is, I mean, I had cash in the bank, but not enough to cover them. I had inventory in the freezers that I needed to get to the summer to sell.
Yeah.
And then and I mean, I had birds in the pasture. But it was just the truth of the matter is it was not trendy anymore. And their algorithms and whatever whatever they look at on a daily basis said, oh, agriculture is higher risk now. Well, we all know that agriculture's been high risk since Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
So I mean, hail can, hail or floods or whatever. I mean, I've experienced it all. I mean, when you have pastured poultry, I mean, flash floods are a problem. I mean, we had thousands of broilers float down the river one time.
Wow.
And so we got out from underneath them, and then the pandemic came along, and that caught me all the way back up we paid them, we paid the local bank way down, and then we made it to our current lender. And once you finally make it to an actual ag lender, then it's just life's a whole lot better.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to take a few minutes to talk about farm team management. With me, I have Tracy, the founder of Grip. Tracy, you created an app that can consolidate team communication into one place. What gave you the idea for creating a team management app?
Well, I noticed even on small operations, there are always issues that slip through the cracks. Maybe one of your team members finds a tank is leaking, they write a note, leave it in the office, but it doesn't get noticed till days later when the tank is empty and the system is ruined. Or maybe you have a piece of equipment that's getting harder and harder to start. No one reports it. The day you really need it, you find the battery's dead. We've all had a situation like that. Yep. All these little things keep getting missed because there isn't an efficient, simple way for everybody to have a voice and communicate those issues that are happening.
So that's something that really applies across the board for any type of operation. Once you get more than 3 or 4 people working together, it really becomes difficult to delegate and track assignments.
Right, so what we did with Grip is build messaging and translating capabilities right into the app so you can manage all your team messages in one place. And there's an additional capability for team members to report issues they notice on the farm or ask questions about a task. You can also track team assignments, to-do lists through the app, making team delegation a lot simpler.
Do you find it's hard for new hires to adjust to using the app?
Not often. The app is very intuitive. There's a small learning curve, but if you can send a text message or take a picture, you can use Grip. And actually, training a new team member is one of my favorite use cases for Grip. Too often there's like one guy in the team who knows the farm like his house, and he's stuck teaching the same thing over and over to the new hires who come and go. With Grip, it's really easy to record videos that can be applied to any assets library that everyone can access. You can really cut down on a lot of training time.
That's really cool. I could definitely see that coming in handy if you hire people seasonally and need to train them fast.
Yeah, you can essentially build a training curriculum and make it available to everyone.
I'm all about training videos. Thanks for sharing, Tracy. What's the best way for our listening farmers to learn more about Grip?
Just head over to our website, grip.ag. That's Grip with 2 P's. You can download the app today and give it a try. Get 15% off when you use the code THRIVEIN25, all one word.
So talk to me a little bit about, you're in Indiana. What are some of the regulations that you deal with that are kind of particular to your state? It seems like eggs are kind of a challenging product over there.
Oh, what part is challenging?
Well, you got to put an expiration date on them.
Yeah.
You have to size them all properly. They want specific sizes.
Oh, we label ours medium or larger, and we label them as ungraded.
Mm-hmm.
So we put an expiration date on them, but you've got 45 days.
Yeah.
So that's not especially now, we don't have eggs that sit around much more than 7 to 10 days. So that's handy. But no, the barrier to entry on eggs has not been anything that we've really experienced as a hardship.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about, have you guys experienced any price increases or anything with the bird flu challenges?
Oh, we are in the thick of bird flu over here. I'm in Henry County, and one county to the east and the north, the Cooper Farms that's in western Ohio, they've kind of bled into Randolph and Jay counties in Indiana. And they had some large breaks. But no, I have good relationships with all my hatcheries. And so my 2026 pullets are already ordered. And so I don't know. I'm always a year or more out as far as keeping up with replacements on the pullet side. And then, like my 2026 broilers are already booked. So getting extras would be hard. But if you listen to President Trump when he addressed the Secretary of Agriculture during his that first congressional speech, there
Yeah.
there was one message: Madam Secretary, get the price of eggs down. And then there was a big period, and then he moved on. And
Yeah.
and I've been through that before. I mean, the last time we had a bird flu outbreak was in the spring of 23, and they pumped, they pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into the commercial poultry industry. And when the egg price broke in the spring of 24, I mean, they were going into dumpsters. I mean, we fed, like, in the spring of 24, which you got to remember was 1 year ago. It was not that
Correct.
long ago.
Yeah.
We fed at least 2,000 dozen to calves and to pigs, and I mean, everything I owned was eating 2 or 3 eggs a day.
Wow.
Because I mean, the commercial market had completely crashed. Traded egg prices were down around, believe it or not, there is still actually laying hens in captive hands where they actually trade eggs, just like, they have a traded beef price. Um,
Oh.
yeah, didn't know that. Yeah, 5 or 6% of the eggs in the country are still in captive hands. And so the traded egg price was down like 60 cents or something. It was kind of like when oil went negative during the pandemic. I mean, you could not give it, you couldn't give it away. I mean, that's where eggs were in January of 24. But now, of course, that the bird flu came back around again. Traded prices for eggs were up $8-9 a dozen. You know, I mean, there's still some poultry in captive hands in Versailles, Ohio, and I mean, semi loads of eggs were going out for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're like, oh,
Wow.
this is just silly. So I mean, yeah, 1 year you're putting them in the dumpster or you're composting them, and the next year, they're worth $7 or $8 a dozen. I mean, it makes no sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We're
we
paying.
we
Yeah.
did not increase our flock size this time. Um, the last time eggs dipped, I increased flock size, and I mean, yeah, I lost my shirt for about 6 months. It was September of 24 before I got our egg prices back up to full retail where we'd been.
Yeah. And what's your
It took
full retail price?
today's 7.
Okay.
Yeah, wholesale eggs for high volume customers are 59 a case. Case is 15 dozen, and then for low volume they're at 61, plus a modest delivery fee, and then retail eggs are at 7.
Okay. Talk. And which breed are you running?
Oh, we raise amber lynx.
Okay.
I really like those hens. So yeah, that is our breed of choice at Becker Farms.
Okay. And are you doing the full raising, or doing the pullets and everything, or do you just bring
Yeah,
in? Okay.
no, so I the whole story goes is that I'd laid in 400 red sex lynx way back many years ago when we had flocks of 400 or 500, and I had a fitting on a water pop loose overnight, and I flooded part of the brooder house, and we lost like 120. Let's just say we lost 120 5 or 6 day old pullets. And of course, you get your water line fixed and you learn from your mistake, and you're like, well, apparently these all need, good hose clamps, and you can't rely on the little clamp that comes with the system.
Yes.
And then about a week later, Rural King in Newcastle had about 100 of these amber link hens on sale for 25 cents a piece because they were starting to feather out.
Yeah.
And so we bought them because I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I've done. I shouldn't be mixing two chicks from two hatcheries, but I'm like, I'm short of eggs all the time and I need another 120 hens. So I said,
Yeah.
well, we're going to wing it and see what happens. Well, it worked out fine, but boy, we really fell in love with those hens. Um, we had some challenges back then with hawks, and it seemed like the hawks only like to eat the red hens.
Interesting. So they
That
didn't go after the white ones.
it was weird. I assume I'm like, I don't know, is my local hawk colorblind? I mean, I don't know, but he didn't mess with the white hens. And then if you look at the genetics, I mean the maternal side is the same line as red sex links, and the paternal side is the same line as your white leghorns.
Oh, okay.
And so the hen is white, but she lays brown eggs, and they have really, really nice appearing table eggs.
Okay.
I mean, as far as depth of color, shape, and size, I mean, they flat out sell.
Yeah.
I mean, if you lay them out on a table at a farmer's market, they sell themselves. And my challenge with both red sex links and couple of the other breeds was it seemed like they were a lot more aggressive hens, and the amber links I feel like are just more mellow, and maybe we just know better what we're doing nowadays. But no, we like our amber links, and so I have them on order from the same hatchery that I've ordered from for many years now.
Now you also do turkeys. What
Yeah,
breed of turkeys do you raise?
broad-breasted whites.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with those, when do you typically bring them in?
Well, I have started. I actually get them started. So they come in at 6 to 8 weeks of age, and they're typically hatched. The challenge with Thanksgiving turkeys is that the closer you get to July 1st, the harder it is to get poults. And of course, turkey breeders have had some health issues over the last 2 or 3 years, and so they're hatching out middle of June, and so then we'll get them 6 to 8 weeks after they hatch.
Okay. And then, so when do you harvest around Thanksgiving, or do you sell them frozen?
Well,
They sold fresh.
yeah, I mean, for many years we did fresh birds, but our local processor that could do fresh birds, as they kept remodeling their poultry line, it became evident that they needed to quit doing turkeys. So
Gotcha.
So processing, I mean, for 2021, we did 6,000, but we'll only do like 600 this year, because my small local processing plant is the only plant that is kind of realistic. I mean, I could haul them to Central Illinois, but I just don't have the time or, truthfully, the desire. Um, there's a good farm in Michigan that raises many thousands of them, and so I can send my old wholesale customers to him, and he's willing to raise them in Michigan and drag them to Illinois, and then I have no idea how he sorts them, because I mean that becomes the challenge, is especially with fresh birds. I mean, the clock is ticking, so
Yeah.
you have 6,000 of them, and they range in weight from 10 to 26 pounds, and so you got to sort them and figure out who's getting what birds, and yeah, so that becomes a bit of a challenge. But
Yeah.
yeah, this year we'll do 600, and that'll be good enough for this year.
Yeah. Okay. And so then you actually make lunch meat with that.
Yeah, Purveyor in Indianapolis that we've worked with for years will take turkey breast and make us lunch meat. Yep.
Okay. And so what are the processors doing all that for you, or are you using a kitchen, or?
No, so whole turkey breast would go out to the purveyor that specializes in salamis and lunch meats, and
Okay.
yeah, and then he'll cure it and smoke it and slice it and pack it and send it back frozen, and then we sell it in 8-ounce packages frozen.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the marketing. Where do you market most of your product?
So the majority of our product goes to the Indianapolis metropolitan area. We go to 2 farmers markets in the summer, 1 farmers market in the winter, and then we're a participant in an online farmers market that delivers twice a week. Then after that, it's really word of mouth. We have customers that'll just email my wife what their order is, and we'll pull it out of inventory and get it boxed up. And then if they're real local, then we may just deliver it ourselves. And if they're kind of out of our normal delivery network, then we're able to use a third party delivery service to deliver orders.
Gotcha. And so now you have been in the wholesale market. So that means that were you selling to other like farm markets or CSA farms or?
I sell animals any way that I can. So, I mean, last week I sold animals live to a farmer that sells quarters, halves, and wholes of beef. There's another farm that's similar to us that we've sold them live animals over the years. We wholesale eggs to some local farm stands, to some local like small grocers. Bakeries are a big one. So we wholesale eggs to multiple different types of businesses.
Okay. All right. And then at the farmers market, kind of what has your marketing been there? What's kind of like, how have you branded yourself?
Oh, I mean, we're pasture-based, non-GMO, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, and then we just kind of let the product speak for itself after that.
Okay.
Yeah, marketing is hands down our weak point.
Okay.
I mean, the pandemic, during the pandemic, everything sold itself. 2001, even product, rolled off the shelf, and you just didn't have to work hard at selling it. Now we're to the point that it's time to get a better website and ramp up our ability to reach out to new customers that have not purchased from us before, and to begin to generate a new customer base.
Gotcha. So why do you think the pandemic people were all over the local food?
Availability.
Okay.
And like, for me, the second week of March there, I mean, I always tell the story. I was driving down State Road 3, south of Newcastle, and there was a news report that Tom Hanks and his wife were held up quarantined in their house in Maui, Hawaii, and they were on one of the national morning shows, coughing and like, yeah, we're sick and we're corona positive. We picked it up, wherever. And I thought, they're going to shut this whole show down. Like, they're going to lock this up. I'm like, and just going through my mind, I'm like, Americans hate stress. Beef hangs for 2 weeks. Get your act together. It's time now. It's go time. At that particular time, we wholesaled a lot through a company that supplied 4 college kitchens.
Okay.
And I'm like, they're going to send those college kids home, and the product that I have for those college kitchens, I'm like, I'm going to be sitting on that. And so I called a couple of the processors that process for that group, and I said, Miss Robin, I want every spot you've got. She's like, oh, Kyle, it's going to be okay. Blah, blah, blah. I said, no, ma'am. I said, I want every spot you got. She says, all right. She goes, I'll put your name on all the spots, but we've got plenty of room. We can get you in whenever you need to get in. And I said, okay. And so then I called my dad and I said, how many calves have you got getting ready to go? And he's like, I don't remember. Either dad had 26 and I had 24, or dad had 24 and I had 26. I'm like, all right, well, I got 50 head to work with. And so then I told him, I said, we're going to need ground beef by the pallet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got a bunch of cull cows down at the middle farm, which is one of the farms I grew up on.
Yeah.
I start talking over him. I'm like, Dad, we got to figure out if those cows are open, and we got to figure out who can go. I said, how fast can you get those cows locked up? I said, oh, let's get the chute out. Let's get down there. So let's get them cows through the chute, figure out who's open. And
Yeah.
he goes, Kyle, they're all open. And I said, all right, Sherlock. I said, how do you know they're all open? He goes, I never took the bull down. And I said, well, someday I want old farmer problems. And he goes, I said, why in the world, Dad, would you not have taken the bull down to breed those cows? Because it's March. He's been
Yes.
feeding these things all winter. And he goes, well, those cows are just getting really, really old. They're the original cows from when we sold the dairy in 2001.
Yeah.
And I went, Dad, those cows are 17, 18, or 19 years old. And he goes, yep, I know. That's why I didn't take the bull down. And I said, but Dad, you've been feeding them all winter. He goes, yeah. And I said, why didn't you sell them last fall when you weaned the calves off of them? Well, I just kind of figured one day you'd need ground beef. And I said, okay. And I said, but you fed them all winter. He goes, yeah, but if I'd have sold the cows, then I'd have had to sell the hay, and then people would have been calling me to buy the hay. And I went, so it was too big. I kid you not, my dad is so introverted, he would have rather fed his 18-year-old cows hay than have someone call him and attempt to buy the hay. And I went, good. I said, Dad, like I said, someday I want old farmer problems where it just doesn't matter anymore. And I said, load them ladies up. I said, they go on. I said, and back then we had to ship them on Sunday. And I said, they're going to leave Sunday. I said, we need ground beef.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, and that was the very first load I sent. And we got 4.5 pallets of ground beef back home out of them cows. And I sold it in 8 days.
Wow.
When everything broke in the March 20s. And we never ran out of ground beef.
Yeah.
I saw it coming, and of course I know enough people that and you couldn't get cattle. The commercial processors couldn't process cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And so, somebody would have, a couple of aged out cows or whatever. Well, you couldn't get them killed. And so of course, I tend to be a phone call that people make when they run into a problem. And, so a neighbor or whatever would call me and be like, I got, 2 open cows and I can't get anybody to even bid them because they can't get them killed. And I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
I said, I need all the ground beef I can get. So yeah, we really ramped it up. And then the other big blessing is that they threw all the kids out of college, but they didn't give them any unemployment. And so there was massive amounts of labor that got sent home from college. And at that point they didn't know, Zoom wasn't even a thing, in March of 20. So they didn't, the professors didn't know how to continue on with classes. It took some time for everybody to kind of figure out how they were going to adjust. And the rest of that spring semester of 20 was just kind of a waste. I'm going to say they just kind of passed everybody. Some of them attempted to take some exams online and different things, but for the most part, they were just kind of done with that particular semester. And so we had the best crew we've ever had for help wise. And yeah, we all went through the pandemic together. So
Okay. Yeah. Well, this has been great. Talk a little bit about what would your advice be for someone who's new at farming?
Well, get really good mentorship. Yeah, that for sure would, I guess, would be my number one thing would be get really good mentorship. Either go work for somebody for a few years, and really get immersed in the whole from start to finish. Um, because I mean there will be hurdles that you didn't know existed, you know. And um so yeah, I mean that would be number one. Um yeah, I mean I one of my weaknesses would still be refrigeration. That's still something that I have to hire out. But yeah, learning all aspects of the business from start to finish would kind of be top of my list. And
Gotcha.
don't be afraid to ask questions. So
All
yeah.
right. Well, Kyle, we really appreciate you coming on today and sharing about your farm and agriculture, the fascinating look, and we wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you. I've listened to your podcast. I think Eli and Genesis from Full Hand Farm were way
Okay.
back. We're way back in the day, and that's what they're friends of ours. And so that was when I was actually introduced to your podcast. So I've listened to many episodes over the years in the trucks. I
Okay.
appreciate you having me on.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.